Welcome, Keith, to our virtual testing foundation session. I won't say it is a webinar.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you again. I know we had the round of interns come through Academy, and that was super exciting. So my relationship with virtually testing has been great. So I'm always happy to talk to you and your interns.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what? We got some questions from our interns, and we just wanted to chat with you. We wanted to see that how our interns can learn from you about the AttackIQ Academy, and we'll talk about some benefits as well. So why don't we jump right into it?
Yeah.
Someone who is actually considering, and there should be only few of them left. Everybody should be joined AttackIQ Academy already. We'll post the VTF unique link in the show notes here. But what are the benefits of AttackIQ Academy courses? Like, why would one should consider? What is your target audience when it comes to those courses? Is it beginner level, or someone should know a little bit about the industry, etc.?
Yeah. So, I'd love to say like the courses are for everybody. They're for beginners, but there's such a wide description of beginners, right? Is that beginners to cybersecurity or beginners to technology? Is that, somebody who is really good with a computer, just doesn't know cybersecurity? Yeah, they'd be perfect for AttackIQ Academy. But if they don't have sort of fundamental understandings of the basics of how computers communicate and how computers work and things like that, it might make some sense because a lot of it focuses on organizational principles and things like that, but it's not going to help as much as knowing the basics. With that being said, once you have kind of the very basics covered, I've had plenty of people that are new to cybersecurity come to AttackIQ Academy. They understand technology, but cybersecurity is kind of a new world for them. And what we offer there is a bit different. At least I try to make it a bit different than what you would get anywhere else online, right? There's more people doing the sort of classes that we're teaching now, but before we started, there was no training on MITRE ATT&CK, right? It was this thing that everybody knew what it was, but they didn't know how to operationalize it. There was no sort of training. And I think that's a really good entrance point for somebody who's new too, right? Because it's a gigantic introduction to a new vocabulary, a new lexicon that's shared amongst everybody. So it's an important thing for a beginner to comprehend because you can apply that to so many different things. There also weren't people teaching purple teaming, right? Which is this whole other concept where, one of the things I see online a lot is a lot of people get into security and say, I'm going to be a penetration tester, right? And that's their only focus. Well, what they don't realize is that usually takes about 10 to 15 years of experience first, right? So having that sort of narrow focus doesn't really help out too much. But then they get exposed to this idea of purple teaming, right? Which is a little bit different than red teaming. It includes elements of red teaming, but it's for anybody on either the red or the blue team. And it's the two working together, right? So I think those two concepts alone expose beginners or entry-level cybersecurity professionals to kind of a whole new thought process, right? And then from there, they can kind of branch out. And those are two of the main pillars that we teach at Academy. The third is breach and attack simulation, right? And then we're just starting a new one. We just released a course last week. We're starting a new one on cybersecurity leadership, which is more for those that are in a CISO role or a director manager role targeting a CISO role. But the majority of our classes on there are for people trying to just get their foot in the door of cybersecurity and then also build upon those skills, right?
Is AttackIQ planning some of the maybe certified AttackIQ InfoSec specialist, some kind of,
so like a certification, right? Like a big certification. Yeah. Actually, exactly. Yeah, we are. So we are planning that. I can't talk about it too much because we're really just kind of in the rudimentary planning phases of it, right? But the idea is to take everything that we teach, because everything that we teach falls under the umbrella of threat-informed defense. That's why it comes up in every single foundational class that we teach. We talk about threat-informed defense, threat-informed defense, threat-informed defense. Actually giving a talk tomorrow, or not tomorrow, I'm sorry, next week, we're doing our first Academy live. And even in that class, it's not necessarily a beginner's class, but even in that class, we're still going to hit on threat-informed defense, right? So we have this focus on threat-informed defense as the overarching thing. So I'm envisioning a certificate where it's not only just test questions, right? That may be version 1, but we want to do like practical exams too, right? How can you apply a threat informed defense in this exercise, in the scenario that we give you? How does that work out, right? And that's, so it's going to take some work to get to that level. I'm thinking like V1 will look, pretty similar to some sort of online sort of test that you could take, or certification test you'd take at like a Pearson VUE Center or something like that, like a regular testing one, but it'll be like multiple choice type questions. But eventually we do want to roll that into a practical exam. And kind of phase 1 of all of that is putting together like a really understandable learning path, because we have kind of 3 learning paths right now that really give you guidance in 3 different areas, but we want to tie all that together. So we need to create this learning path where we tell people, by the end of this path, by the time you finish these 6, 9, 10, 15 courses, whatever we decide they're going to be, you should be ready to take this test. And then we'll have that test. So yeah, we are looking at certification. Nice.
But my question is, how do you measure, or will you measure the success of the AttackIQ Academy courses?
So we measure success on a couple different things. I have metrics that I look at, and my leadership has kind of higher level metrics that they look at, but we look at a couple things. We look at registration, overall registration, right? Are we continuing to register as many people as we regularly do? And then how can we improve that? How can we get more people into AttackIQ Academy? So we look at that. Then we also look at course registration, right? I want to see how many people are raising their hand saying, I want to take this course. Right. And then I'll also, I got a couple different points that I stop at and look at that too. So I go, okay, well, they've registered for a course. That's one point. The next step is, do they start taking it? Right. Because you can raise your hand and say, I want to take a course without even starting it. So at least if somebody raises their hand, it doesn't start it, I know there's a demand for that course. Then what I've got to figure out is, how do I get people to start that? Right. And that could be encouragement through stuff that we put out on social, telling people why this thing is important. Why you should learn about this. Or it could be, me reaching out to students and asking them what they think of different things too, which I do that sometimes. I'll occasionally shoot an email over to students where, I'll look into an account, see that, hey, they started something and didn't really get around to it. I'd like to know more about what's going on there, see if there's something I can do to help. The next metric I look at is how many people got through the entire class but didn't take the quiz or the final exam. And then I take another metric of how many people did take the final exam, because that tells me a couple different things. It tells me, is the exam broken or too hard? Or are people just reviewing the content and not taking the exam, which is fine by me too, right? I don't necessarily need people to certify. I just want people to get the concept and understand it. And if they'd like to certify for themselves, that's fantastic. Like that's great. But for me, I mark success as how many people actually attended my course, went through all the material on that course. So we look at that. We also send out surveys for every one of our classes, right? When you take a course with us, you'll get a survey in your email, and we encourage people to fill those out. If you're part of our Informed Defenders, and that's like a gamification platform that we use for different social and community things. And if you're a member of Academy, you should have got an email to register for Informed Defenders as well. We tie all this together and we look to see, I'm sorry, I got on a tangent there. So Informed Defenders surveys, that's where I was. So I look at those surveys too. One of the main things I look at is something called a Net Promoter Score. And that really tells me how popular is a course, right? And there's a couple reasons that we could miss a mark on a course, but it tells me how marketable that course is in terms of not me marketing it, but other people. Because Net Promoter Score really tells you how much are other people willing to tell their friends about this class. So to me, that's one of the main scores that I look at. My leadership looks at that too, is that Net Promoter Score, right? We want to understand, are these classes doing what we hope they would do, right? Because every class we create is an experiment. We don't know whether it's going to work or not. We can just take the best guess with the data that we have. I also look at course attendance on a macro level too, to determine which area we should do more courses in, right? If I'm seeing more success in MITRE ATT&CK courses and I'm seeing more people register for those, I'm going to double down and pump those up. If I see more people registering for Purple Team, I'm going to do the same thing there. So that's another important metric that I look at. My leadership doesn't necessarily look at that, but I look at that for roadmaps. So we look at all sorts of metrics, and I have my internal goals and stuff like that are based on those metrics. can't necessarily share those. But I mean, success for AttackIQ Academy and for me is really anytime we release a class and I see at least one person post about it on social media and they give a review, and like an honest review. It doesn't have to be glowing or awesome. It doesn't have to be, complimentary or anything like that, but just seeing an honest review of them sharing the information that they learned from that course with other people. Because ultimately that's my goal, right? Is to be able to teach cybersecurity professionals how to teach other people. That's the only way we're going to help fill in this cybersecurity gap that they say exists, right? The cybersecurity skills gap is to have more teachers. So if I can encourage other people to share that information, that's the biggest indicator of success to me.
That's awesome. And I think one of the ways that I can tell that the AttackIQ Academy is growing and has done really great so far is A, your team is growing, B, the courses are growing, and finally, the most important part is that it's great courses. There are a lot of great courses and they're free. A lot of the trainings these days are costing us even as little as $10, but your courses are free. So why not take it? With that, we were talking about your success. We were talking about AttackIQ's success. We're talking about your long-term goals of growing that number from 21,000 to 50,000. But what else? What else is AttackIQ's Academy's next big
What else are
item?
we working on?
Yeah, like you had the courses, we got it. Informed Defender, we got it. What else? How are you going to keep it, spice it up,
See, this is why I love being on like these live stream sort of things and being in the position I'm in, because I get to drop little nuggets that are exclusive to you guys too, right? So one thing that's not a big secret is we're doing Academy Live, right? We promoted that. The first one is next week. We had over 400 people registered for this thing. So I'm going to be teaching about 400 people, myself and Ben Opal, I should say, Ben, who teaches the purple teaming class. We're teaching this course together. It's called Threat-Informed Emulation Plans, and we only teach it live. We only teach it once a month. The intention was to actually teach it live and in person, right? And with the second wave of the Delta variant coming through of coronavirus, that we got really nervous about trying to do it live. So we pulled back and we decided to call it SimuLive. So we're starting that next week, and we're going to do one of those a month until we can get it to be live. And then we're going to take it around live in different cities. Starting in the US, then we'll branch out to Europe and some other areas as well. Also, so we've been tossing around this idea of a live stream for a while at AttackIQ, just as AttackIQ in general. We could never really come up, and we thought Academy would be like the perfect place to do some sort of live stream, but we could never really come up with an idea of like content that I can commit to like 30 minutes a week or 30 minutes every other week or anything like that, because it's really hard, right? I have a lot of respect for some of these streamers that do like 1-2 hour long streams every week. Like that's a lot. I don't have that sort of time. So we needed something that we could commit to. And I think we finally came up with a pretty good idea. So as I mentioned before, like one of the sort of troubling trends that I've noticed in online and in social media, it's not necessarily a social media thing, but it's just where I happen to notice it. A lot of people that are new to cybersecurity are making this declaration of, I'm going to be a penetration tester, without having any knowledge of what that actually takes. Because that is going to quickly lead to disappointment when you find out that nobody's going to hire you as a penetration tester for at least 10 years, right? Like as an actual, you're doing penetration testing work, the job that we all think of. And the reason for that is you have to have all these other skills that go into that. And a lot of those are really basic IT skills. You've got to understand the OSI model. Like if you don't understand the OSI model, you don't understand the three-way handshake, you don't understand how databases work, you don't understand TCP versus UDP. When you don't understand those things, becoming a penetration tester, it's a great goal, but you need to push it back further. So the main problem is having a narrow focus on your career. And this could be said about any career, right? I've even talked about how so organizational psychologist that I love, Adam Grant, he's an author, TED Talk. He's given a couple TED Talks. He talks about how asking somebody what they want to be when they grow up is a horrible question because it locks you into this one thing, right? So I'm applying this to the same thing, even to grownups. Don't lock yourself into something when you don't know what's out there. So how do we come up with that? Or how do we resolve that? We have to give people exposure to all of the different types of careers that are in cybersecurity, because there are some that you probably never even thought you existed, right? And or they exist, but you never really considered like that's something you'd be interested in. I mean, for myself, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, would I be running an educational program for a cybersecurity software company, I wouldn't even thought of it. Like that wouldn't have been a thought in my mind. So the idea is we're going to do a live stream where we bring in people that are at all levels of cybersecurity, even people that are brand new and interns, people that are CISOs or have been CISOs, people that have been at all levels in many different areas of cybersecurity. And I'm going to interview them about their careers, how they got their start. How did you break in? How did you break into this? And then how'd you navigate your career? How'd you get to this point? Because I think by having people with all these various backgrounds and then asking them deep questions and asking them to tell their story will really expose the cybersecurity community to all of these different options that are out there, and it'll unlock that focus on this one specific thing. So that's another thing that's headed out. As far as courses go, we're going to continue to put out courses that align with MITRE Center for Threat Informed Defense. When they release projects, we're always going to try and put out a course to match that. So there's a couple that are coming out. We did a security stack mappings for Microsoft Azure class a couple months ago. We've got one coming out for AWS. We'll be out here in the next couple weeks. There's different product releases coming out from MITRE, like TRAM. Right, so TRAM 2.0. So we're going to cover that. There's other mapping projects like I can't talk about it because I'm not sure if it's public yet. So we've got a relationship with MITRE CTID. I'm not exactly sure what I can disclose, but so there's other mapping projects coming out as well that we'll be working on. We've even talked about doing a mapping learning path and giving a badge and certificate around that, right? To where if you've taken all of these different MITRE ATT&CK mapping courses, we can certify you as MITRE ATT&CK mapper, whatever we want to call it, mapping professional, or I don't know. So, we've got plans, and it's hard for me to talk too far into the future because I always work in iterations and cycles, right? Every quarter, I kind of reevaluate where the roadmap is headed and where it should be headed. So it's hard for me to say too far out. Like it's even hard for me to say what I'm going to be doing 6 months from now with Academy, right? Because it all changes. We're very metrics based, as we talked about earlier. So I always keep an eye on the metrics, see where the market's headed, and see what we can put out that's going to provide the most value.
And I think that's wise what you have given already. It's good to know where AttackIQ Academy is heading. I know a lot of our viewers, a lot of our interns, they always want to know from our partnership perspective how we'll be partnering with AttackIQ Academy. So it's good to have these nuggets.
You can give us some info or updates on the cyber range at AttackIQ, the inbuilt simulations we got with some of your courses. What you can tell us about some future or any updates. Yep.
Yeah. So right now, so like our cyber range isn't necessarily directly managed by me. It's managed by somebody at AttackIQ, but he manages like every single range and cloud thing at AttackIQ. Like he's got a much broader job than just the Academy range. Our focus, since we started doing those on-demand range courses, I'd say about a year ago, is to try and we've had a focus mostly on user experience and stability, right? We want to try and avoid outages. We want to make sure that users have the best experience possible, that we reduce support and stuff like that. So we've had a strong focus on that. I think what'll happen, kind of the next iteration of that is, being able to add in other products or other, I don't even know really. Like we have flexibility with the range on what we can do, but it also depends on like the vendor partners that we can bring in that are willing to offer, integration licenses and things like that. So that it takes a little bit more to add in, right? Say I wanted to teach a course with, and I haven't been talking to them or anything like that, but let's just say I wanted to teach a course with Microsoft, right? And in that course, we wanted to be able to use Microsoft Defender in the lab. Well, in order to do that, like I need a license for Microsoft Defender for all these different lab machines that are popping up, and I need agreement from Microsoft. And there's a lot that goes into trying to integrate other people's things into the cyber range legally and in a way that can benefit everybody. Aside from that, I think it's, if we can find a way to maybe hook some more open source tools in there, that might be interesting to some folks. It really, I try to let the content of the material that we're teaching dictate what we do in the lab, right? Like I may be writing out a course and coming up with the lab for it and get an idea of like, oh, this would be really cool to do in the lab. And if we can't do it, like I'll write it down as okay, maybe we try and figure this out later. But for the most part, at least this last year, we've really just focused on stability and user experience. So I wish I had a better answer than that, but we'll have to see where the lab goes. I'm always looking at feedback too. So, when you're filling out those surveys, if you have an idea where you're like, hey, I think it'd be really cool to use the lab like this, if you put that in there, or even just send it into our email address, academy@attackiq.com. Like I'll take suggestions through there too. I don't have a big enough ego to think that I know the best. So I'm always listening for feedback, particularly from students, because you guys are the ones that use it all the time.
My next question will be, how or has AttackIQ helped fill in jobs in the cybersecurity community? As in, do you help the students find jobs with major companies like Microsoft or anything like that?
Yeah, so we don't really do that. It'd be incredibly difficult. One, there could be a conflict of interest because we are a cybersecurity software company. That's our main focus. We're not an education company. I know we have some people that just know AttackIQ Academy and that's it. AttackIQ Academy is funded by AttackIQ. It'd be great to try and set up some sort of hub where people can get access to jobs and things like that and make introductions. But the reality is that like that's a hard thing to coordinate and manage. What I will say is there are a lot of employers out there that do recognize the AttackIQ Academy badges and certificates because there's CISOs, there's managers that tell their teams as part of their teams like KPIs, like you need to take X amount of AttackIQ Academy courses. So there are leaders in security that recognize the value of the training and those certifications that we give out to people. So that could be an argument for something that we are doing to help people get jobs. Again, with the live stream that I talked about too, I'm hoping that although it isn't a direct way for me to be like, hey, have you met so and so? They're hiring. It's a way for me to expose people to options and opportunities, and they can start looking for things that they didn't look for before. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you guys a little secret that I used when I was looking for a job. Not for AttackIQ, it's for another company. Go to the Black Hat website and look up who their sponsors are. Because if they have money to sponsor Black Hat, they have money to hire you. So look up who the sponsors are. Start at the top with the platinum level sponsors, the diamond sponsors. Go to their websites, look and see if they're hiring, and see if you can get a job there. Again, like Black Hat is very expensive. So if you can sponsor Black Hat, you probably have money to hire people. So just a little job tip for those out there searching.
And that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll wrap up with this one. We talked about AttackIQ, where we started Academy, and where we are today. We talked about the long-term plans. We talked about the nuggets that you're working on. We talked about how our interns, VTF interns, have benefited from this one. So one last question, fully loaded. From here, when you are actually targeting the, I would say, community so far, AttackIQ Academy has always been determined and committed to the community, and you always have given these courses for free. In future, do you see this becoming a more like a package or a platform where you'll start charging, or at least maybe B2B? To your point, maybe a security leader might say that, you know what, Keith, for my team, I want to have a specialized portal where latest and greatest AttackIQ Academy courses, but they're not for free. Do you see that going somewhere?
I mean, never say never, but the statement from my executive sponsors, who are the ones that would make that determination, are our classes will always be free. So, if we do something like that, it would be, yeah, I don't know. It would have to be like material that has, that we didn't release on Academy, and like a B2B thing maybe, or, we've talked about even charging for like that certificate that we talked about earlier. So not the courses to take it, or not the courses that would give you the actual training, but to take that certification itself. But we also recognize like not everybody has the money to do that. So we'll find a way to offset that by offering that as a prize in Informed Defenders, right? You get a certain amount of points, you get a voucher to take this certification for free. So anything that we do charge for, we always have the community in mind, and we recognize that like not everybody has the money for this stuff. So we want to try and find options for people, right? We don't want to completely shut people out.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job at, as being in community, I can definitely recognize that. I can definitely say that on behalf of our community that we really are grateful and thankful that we have this partnership with the AttackIQ Academy. Now, just like any partnership, right? You're giving us a lot, community is soaking up, taking it all. What can we give in return? How can we help you? Other than amplifying it, other than telling people that go take courses if you have not done it. So
tell them about what you learned. I mean, don't plagiarize my material, but like go out and tell them what you learned. Like take what I wrote, put it in your own words and put it out there. And that'll do two things. One, it'll help solidify the concept more for you, because if you can teach somebody else something, like that's how you master a concept. But two, like it's sharing the knowledge. Obviously tell them like, oh, I learned about this from AttackIQ Academy, but like reteach this stuff. Get it out there. It's important for people to know and get educated on it. So I mean, that's obviously one thing, and like I talked about metrics too, like I get metriced on registration. So you guys signing up and taking classes, that always helps me out too. Feedback is always helpful, and sharing what you've learned. Those are the two biggest things that I can ask for. Fill out the surveys when you finish the class. Let us know what you think with your honest feelings. I've got thick skin, I can take it. And then share that information with other people, right? Tell them about what we taught you. Tell them how it's helped you. Tell them what they can do with it. Try and share that information, educate your network as well.
Right on. Well, with that, thanks so much. Thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you, Mallory, asking these questions from community, from our intern, and
yeah, and it's great working with you guys too. Thank you so much for your questions. This has been great.